Hey, this is Derek. It's almost November. I haven't made a NaNoWriMo prep video yet, so this is it. NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. It's when we try to write 50,000 words in 30 days. It's an achievable goal, and the reason a lot of people do NaNoWriMo is just to force themselves to do the thing that they've been putting off. Maybe you've always wanted to write a book, but you've never really had the time. NaNoWriMo is about choosing to have the time, and I'm going to give you six steps to prepare for NaNoWriMo, because it is a difficult, daunting task. It can be overwhelming. A lot of people quit or give up. I'm going to help you to not do that and to actually hit your word counts and to keep going with some motivation and accountability tips. So number one is to clear your plate. I'm actually in a kind of a boot camp for entrepreneurs in Chiang Mai, Thailand. We're doing 10 days of get shit done, which just means every day we're going to focus on doing a lot of work. I'm getting up a lot earlier than I'm used to, so my energy is a little bit different, but because I have to be here all day and I have to check in every day, I'm getting more done than I would usually. I'm very good at procrastinating, especially those big long-term projects that nobody really cares whether or not you get them done. They're more like personal ambitions, much like writing a book is. But to do it, a lot of other people aren't going to understand that this is important to you. If this is something that you choose to do, you have to learn how to say no and when to say yes, which means if this is what you're going to do, you're going to be all in. You're going to do NaNoWriMo. You're going to finish your 50,000 words. We'll talk later about how to keep up your confidence, because that's really important. But the main idea here is to clear your plate. So what I'm actually doing here in these 10 days is finishing a whole bunch of other projects that I've been putting off for a long time, so that on November 1st, I have a clear plate for like the whole month of November. I don't have that much to do because I've finished all of it in October. So I'm working really hard right now. I'm actually not planning or plotting my novel. We'll talk a little bit about that in another point in a couple of seconds. But I'm not doing the outlining right now. I'm just working really hard to finish all this stuff, all the responsibilities that I need to get done, so that nobody's really going to bother me in November. I can just focus on writing. So partly it's about moving things off your plate by getting them done early, but the other part is just crossing them off your list. If you have a big to-do list and you have 10 things and you're not going to get them all done, all those 10 things are going to weigh on your brain and you're going to feel weird and guilty about them if you're writing instead. So don't try to take on too much in November. Keep it really simple. The secret to producing more is not to do more, it's to do less. All successful people say the real secret to success is just saying no more often and only saying yes to those hell yes opportunities that you really feel good about. So on that to-do list, if you look at all the ones that don't make you feel good, if they make you feel kind of bad, you're going to procrastinate. So just focus on the ones that give you enthusiasm and energy. Those are the ones that are going to be a lot easier to finish, and those are the ones that are more meaningful for you. You probably can't live your entire life that way, only doing the stuff that you feel good about, but you can do it for a month, and you can, kind of let other things slide. You can explain to people that you're doing this and it's really important to you, and you're just going to be, writing. Set some ground rules with your loved ones, your friends or family, whoever you live with. For example, when you put the big headphones on, do not disturb the writer. Have a sign that other people recognize and respect. Make sure that you very clearly communicated this is what you're going to do to the people around you, so they're not interrupting you. So that's the first tip, is just clear your plate, give yourself space and time to really focus on this goal. Number two is external accountability, and this is a pretty big one, and sometimes it's difficult to get. You can do it by joining NaNoWriMo and signing up for one of the cabins, so you have people to keep in touch with. There's a NaNoWriMo Facebook group. There's also a lot of genre-specific Facebook groups. So I run the Young Adult Authors Alliance, which is a good one. A lot of people in there are doing NaNoWriMo. We won't have like a daily accountability, and that is really important. So you need to find a small group of people who will do it with you. I recommend 5 people or so, even like 1 or 2 if you have a group of 2 or 3. Those are writing buddies, and the idea is ideally you would structure your time together so that you can write together. It's really valuable. I love doing writing retreats, because if you get in a room and you're with other people physically writing, that's really motivating. But you can also do that just by setting up a Zoom call or a Skype call and just leaving the video open and just say, okay, what are you going to work on? What's your word count goal? Set a timer and go. And you just kind of write together, even if you're in different locations or different places. I've seen people do this with like 5 people. They get on a Zoom call, and they're all just working on their own thing with their headphones on, but they're there together. That can be really good, and at the end of it, you check in, you post your results. If you don't want to do the video thing, you can still just do something simple like a Facebook chat or a pop-up Facebook group or even by email, where like in the morning you check in, you set your goal. How much I would focus on, you can set like a word count goal or a time goal, like I'm going to write for 2 hours today, or I'm going to hit 2,000 words a day. I believe the NaNoWriMo daily word count is something like 1,700. If you do that consistently for 30 days, you'll get to the 50,000 words. I try to write 2,000 or 3,000 words because I know some days aren't going to go so well, and I won't do as well. The key is really daily consistency. It's difficult. I know people who do sprints and they do like 10,000 words in a day, which is possible but kind of exhausting. I think it's more reasonable to be successful if you can commit to 2,000 words a day over the long haul with a few sprints thrown in. But the external accountability is really important. There's apps that you can use now. FocusMate is a good one where you can sign up. It's not writer specific, but with FocusMate you can sign up and they'll match you to somebody else who's also about to do a 1 hour sprint or something. You can set your time. You can like kind of Skype for a second and be like, hey, introduce yourself. I'm working on this project. Let's work for 30 minutes. Go. You set a timer. It's that video thing. Afterwards you check in and see how you did. Those are really valuable. I would try to do something like a writing sprint with a writing buddy so that you're doing the writing together, and also a daily accountability where at the beginning of the day you check in, you set daily goals, and at the end of the day you check in, you say what you accomplished, what you did well, didn't do well. We'll talk more about that later, but not just setting your accountability to like 50,000 words at the end of the month because you're probably going to procrastinate. It's hard to keep track of that. You want daily external accountability, somebody else checking in with you. What we do here today is kind of the big check-in number 2. So we finished some goals, now we're setting new goals. And what we were supposed to do this morning is, go up in front of the class, look somebody in the eye, state our goals with confidence and say, I will do this thing. You don't want to be like, I'm going to try to do. You say, I'm going to do the thing. Then somebody else says, are you the type of person I can count on to finish this goal? And you have to look them in the eye and shake their hands and say, yes, I'm that type of person. So it's kind of silly, but saying it out loud with confidence and kind of making a promise to somebody else that you're going to keep each other accountable, it can be really important. There's other apps, I'm not going to name them because I don't remember what they are, but there's some things where you can like put money down for causes that you don't agree with, and if you don't hit your goal, it's going to take the money and donate to something you don't agree with. There's stuff like that. Setting up pain points. You can do goals, like if I hit my 50,000 words, and I would recommend this, set a big celebration for yourself, allow yourself to buy yourself something or to do something you've been wanting to do for a long time. Justify it by saying, if I finish this big achievement of 50,000 words, I'm going to let myself do this thing. I'm getting a little bit off track. I was going to say also something like, instead of watching Netflix every day like you usually do, allow yourself a week off. Like if I do NaNoWriMo and I hit my 50,000 words, it's easy to get stressed out. You're not just going to be able to recover quickly from that, so allow yourself to take 7 days off and binge watch Netflix, and eat junk food and just not do anything for 7 days. But that's your successful goal. That's the thing you're putting off so you can have some time right now. Anyway, that was number 2. We have 4 more of these, so stay tuned. So number 3 is to plan what you're going to write and to use sprints and a timer. It's kind of a little bit more than one, but this is more about the writing process. I recently put together this big resource for writing fiction and outlining fiction chapter by chapter based on the plot dot, but it has like 25 chapters. That's pretty awesome. So if you don't follow my channel, make sure you scroll through and find that other video. It's basically set on the hero's journey, but with some unique twists that haven't been done before. It works really well for my fiction writing. You can do NaNoWriMo for nonfiction, and I also have some plotting and planning resources for nonfiction. But the idea is that the difficult thing is I'm a plotter. I like to plan an outline. What you don't want to do is have so many notes and so much stuff in your head that you get lost. And so like I've discovered when I have my outline, which is in Word, and I have all my notes, my character lists and background information, that's a little overwhelming. And if I go in my Word document and try to sprint, I can't really focus on the scene because I'm too distracted, and I'm trying to like fit stuff in, and that's really dangerous for drafting. NaNoWriMo is really just about drafting, which means getting the words down quickly. So some things that have helped me a lot, I do like to know where I'm going. I at least break down the specific scene, so I'm not entering a scene with like, I have no idea what's going to happen. I know some pantsers to do that. If you're a pantser, that can work. I find there are very successful pantsers who are used to it, and they also know how to tell good stories. So pantsers can get to the end and they have a really strong, really satisfying emotional story. But if you don't have a lot of experience writing fiction, it's also very possible you'll pants your way through 50,000 words and it'll be a mess, and you'll have some good scenes and a lot of crap, and you won't know how to revise it. It's very difficult to revise a messy first draft. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. They've done NaNoWriMo for 10 years, they have 10 messy first drafts, and they can't fix it because they never had any structure or organization. So I'm a big fan of at least hitting the 8 main plot points of the plot dot. So you have some basic structure, and then you can still, as long as you kind of hit those, you're going to have an emotionally satisfying novel, and you can kind of do whatever else you want in the middle. But when you sit down to draft, sprints work really well. You want to have a clear scene of like where you're trying to get to, what's going to happen in this scene. You don't have to get into the details. When I draft, I don't think about the details like where they're standing or what they're wearing, or I don't do the scene building or the description so much. You focus on the what actually happens in the scene. Every scene, something should happen, something new or different that is directly related to the overall story arc or character arc. It has to be relevant. It can't just be a interesting, fun, distracting scene. Something new has to happen or change. So you have to know what that thing is, and you have to get to that thing. That's what the scene is all about. I'm going to pause it for a second. No, I'm going to keep going. So it's important to know where you're going, at least for that little soundbite, basically, the scene base. And that's about 2,000 words. A chapter is usually about 2,000 words. It depends. My scenes are probably like 1,000 or 1,500 words. My chapters might be 2,000 or 3,000. I generally have 2 scenes per chapter. I wouldn't necessarily recommend breaking up everything into chapters though, because you may not actually know what fits where. Usually when I'm revising, I have to like move these scenes in different places and figure out how the chapters all fit together. I would just go scene by scene and try to lay it on down. You want to set a timer. You want to do like a 20-minute timing sprint. You want to clear everything else. There are certain tools you can use to block your browser so you can't do research. You can't look things up on the internet. You can also just turn the internet off. What works really well for me, I don't use my computer anymore for drafting. I have an external Bluetooth keyboard. I use my iPhone or an iPad. I use the IA Writer app, which is a really simple, no distraction, clear screen. I have it on the black mode. It keeps the writing center screen, and it fades out the writing when you hit return, which is really great for focus. So I just use that. I go into my scene with like a couple sentences on top of what's going to happen, and then I set a timer and I write. Try not to stop. I've basically doubled my word count doing that, so I'm excited to try NaNoWriMo this year because I think I'm a lot faster than I used to be. That works well for me. The accountability with somebody else checking in at night, but doing the sprints. I can usually do maybe 500 words in a 20-minute sprint, but I'm building up. I know a lot of people who can do 1,000 words or 2,000 words in a 20-minute sprint. If you just don't stop, if you lay down the words, I think people generally write it like 60 words per minute or something. So in 10 minutes, you should be able to write 600 words. In 20 minutes, you should be able to write 1,000 or so. I can probably write 1,000 words in a 20-minute sprint. I don't always just time myself and power through it. It's a little difficult if you're on IA Writer or an iPhone and you also want to time yourself. You kind of need an external timer, so you might want to get a little external kitchen clock or countdown timer. You probably want to cover up the screen. The other thing I'm going to mention here, this is kind of the sprinting thing. And like I said, I use IA Writer because it keeps it really simple. There's only one sentence. You can't get distracted by all the other stuff. But also I found, I have a friend who closes her eyes and she just sprints, with her eyes closed and just channels the words through her. There's also, because that works and because it's kind of a known phenomenon, there's a tool called ILYS, which is ILYS.com, and it only shows you like one letter or one sentence or one phrase or something per while you're typing. So you can't backspace. That one's hardcore. You can't backspace. You can only write forward, and you have to edit later. So that takes some getting used to, but the idea is once you train yourself not to backspace for mistakes and to write it the first time, you'll drastically improve your word count. I haven't used that tool that much because it does feel like a learning curve. It might be something you want to check out. There's also tools like Write or Die where you have to keep going. I think Write or Die has like a kamikaze mode where if you pause writing, it'll start to go backwards and delete your writing. So it really trains you to keep going forward. So those tools are maybe not necessary, but kind of fun. And if you really want to go like hardcore into this, tools like that which train you to go forward and not to think about it and go backwards, that's really important. So that's number 3, which is plan what you're going to do in the scene, use a timer, and focus on sprints, 20-minute sprints, keep going forward, don't stop to edit. I'm going to move on to number 4. So number 4 is about tracking results. And so there's some different ways to do this. I haven't found a really perfect tool that I like to keep track of daily word count, but there is something very effective in setting a daily word count goal and every day writing it down somewhere visible. This is how many words I did. There's an app called Don't Break the Chain, which I think is like, you set a goal, 2,000 words a day. Every day you hit the app. I actually think it's probably more useful to use a real calendar that's on the wall, so you can make a big red X over every day that you hit your word count goal. I'm pretty sure Joanna Penn writes her word count like she does that with a big X, and she also writes her words on the calendar. So she, yes, I hit my word count goal and 3,000 words something today. Tracking long-term progress, so that on the 15th day, when you kind of feel like giving up and you see all this history and you're halfway towards your goal, you don't want to break the chain and quit because you've had like this successful streak. So keeping up your successful streak, that can be a really good motivator, make it really visible or obvious. The other things that you can do, there are tools and there are apps you can use to keep track of your daily word count. I don't really like going in and using a different app. Like if I'm writing in one place and I have to see my word count. One of the reasons I like iWriter is because it does have a word count. So while you're typing, you can see it. The other reason I don't like Microsoft Word is because I have this huge messy manuscript. So if I'm just sprinting in there, I can't really keep track of my daily word count. So I like going to a fresh page and doing, one day's sprinting. I'll usually do in iWriter, I'll do a sprint and then I'll just make a break and I'll keep sprinting on the same document. I have it synced up with Dropbox, so it just goes straight to my Dropbox, and I can just grab that text and paste it into my Word document outline every day. And that way I can kind of keep track of, I wrote this many words today. It keeps track of how many words you wrote in a sprint. That's kind of the system I'm using, but tracking the results, and because you can't improve what you can't measure. So you have to kind of measure how you're doing before you can push yourself to go further. And a lot of this stuff is creating a writing habit. You need to, we'll talk, the next point is about confidence. A big part of NaNoWriMo is just building a long-term writing habit so that with confidence you are capable of writing how many words in 20 minutes, how many words an hour, how many words a day. Once you've done it and you've kind of played around with it, it's not the point of NaNoWriMo, I feel, to finish a good book, although that can be done with experience. I think the point of NaNoWriMo is to prove to yourself, you're capable of writing 2,000 words a day and finishing a book a month, basically. That's a possible achievement. You don't have to spend 2 or 3 years writing a novel, which actually means, writing a novel for an hour on Sundays and most of the time never doing anything. So NaNoWriMo is really just pushing your limits and figuring out what you're capable of. Once you have a baseline, you can scale and you can improve. So my baseline used to be 1,000 words, 1,500 words a day, and I couldn't hit that consistently because I'm not a consistent writer. I'm now able to do 3,000 words a day pretty consistent. Well, I'm able to do 3,000 words a day. I'm not able to do it consistently yet, but that's what I would like to improve upon, which is why I'm going to really try to hit 90,000 words, I guess. If I do 3,000 words a day in NaNoWriMo, I would like to write 3 novels by the end of the year. I have some stuff planned out. These are going to be sequels, which means I'm going to write these books and they're going to be ready to publish pretty much. They'll go through editing and a couple rounds of revision, but then I'm going to publish them. I have experience with plotting and outlining. I know where these stories are going. I know the characters. So I'm hoping I'll be a little faster, but I'm not writing like rough drafts to figure out whether or not I can write because I've done NaNoWriMo in the past. I'm really just focused on putting out more content so I can publish more quickly. So what I was going to suggest, I actually went through something with Sebastian Marshall, who's a really hardcore accountability guy, a productivity guy, where he maps out like every 5 minutes of his day to make sure there's no wasted time. I'm not that hardcore at all, but he had a really cool program where you do some of the daily accountability. You also have teams, so you get scores like if you have teams against each other and if two groups of three, they all want to hit their 2,000 words, you could do something where, Team A will buy Team B dinner, or vice versa, whoever has the most word count goals. Team motivation can be really powerful. So rather than just keeping each other accountable for personal goals, if you set team goals, and you're kind of like in competition, that way you don't want to let your teammates down and lose. That's pretty effective because it's motivation. It's not just like, yeah, I want to help you personally take accountability. It's like, let's go team, let's win this competition. That can be really effective. So I would like to organize things like that for other writers. I have writing courses and I'd like to build in some of that kind of accountability, stuff that I'm working on. But also they had just this document where after every sprint, you write down how many words you got, how you felt about it, what went wrong, what you did well, what didn't go well. Because if you really focus on how you feel after every sprint, you'll start to identify and notice, the drawbacks, the big wins, and what you can improve on, what you can take away. And we'll talk later about energy and health and confidence and things like that. But if you write down your sprints and a little bit of notes, like this is how many words, this is how I felt, this is how well my sprint did. After every sprint, if you reflect and be like, in this sprint, I'm going to do this, I'm feeling really good. After the sprint, I didn't quite hit my goals because, I was uncomfortable, or I ran out of water and I had to go get a tea or something. If you keep track of that stuff, you'll notice how you can improve. You'll notice what didn't work and what you can fix on. And that's why it's important to really track your results, not just your word count goals, but like how you're doing daily or in your sprints. Even if just you have a personal diary, and at the end of the day you sit down and reflect on, today didn't go so well because these other things popped up that I had to take care of. In the future, I could do better by making sure I've turned off my cell phone or whatever. So those are kind of things that you can do. So that was for us, just track your results, your long-term results, so that you can see long-term progress and make I would set your goal for 1,500 words or 2,000, 3,000 words a day for NaNoWriMo. But if you track your results, by the end of NaNoWriMo, you'll have a much clearer indication of your writing style, what works for you, what doesn't work, and how you can personally keep it going and really make NaNoWriMo into a learning experience, not just this thing that you do and you're exhausted afterwards and you don't get anything from it. You want to use it as a tool to get better at writing more quickly and writing better, so that when you finish NaNoWriMo or any kind of writing sprints, you're getting better at writing really high quality fiction or nonfiction, so that you can publish more books. So this is number 5, I think, and it's going to be about confidence and motivation. So this is really important, and it's more psychological, so it's pretty interesting. I used to be really into willpower when I was younger. I've gotten pretty lazy, but a few things you can do with confidence. You don't want to waver and in the middle be like, I might try to do NaNoWriMo, I might try to do my 50,000 word goal, but it doesn't really matter. Or if it doesn't matter to you, if there's no external accountability, it's easy to talk yourself out of it. So you have to be confident that you're just going to do the thing. Even if you don't feel it, you have to be careful about your language. So you have to be careful to say, I'm going to write 50,000 words. I will, I am, I'm going to, not, maybe or I might. Be careful of your self-limiting beliefs. I do this a lot when I'm talking about goals or things that I'm struggling with. I also say things like, I'm not a fast writer. I'm not good at drafting. I say that a lot. So I need to check my own language and really focus on who you want to be and what you want to achieve, and make sure you're, make sure you're only saying those things. Make sure you're not saying or using bad language that's self-defeating. With goals like this, the confidence is really important to keep going. So as long as you believe it, as long as you're sure you're going to do it, that's important for the days when you don't feel like doing it. A few little tricks. Try to be non-rational. If you set an arbitrary goal, like writing 50,000 words in a month, it's an arbitrary goal. It doesn't really have to happen. Hold on a second. There's a plane going overhead. So if you have, what's going to happen is when you set a goal and you try to do it, when your self-doubt kicks in and you lose some confidence and you kind of feel like not doing it anymore, you're going to try to justify yourself out of doing the goal. You're going to rationalize to yourself. So you'll do stuff like, well, it doesn't matter, I'll do it in December, or I don't really know where my novel's going anyway, or I feel stuck, or this other thing is really important or more important to me, you'll convince yourself rationally to give up the goal and use justification. So you need to be careful about logic. And you need to just shut it down. When you have a goal that you're gonna stick to, no matter what, no excuses. So be careful when you start to like self-justify or talk yourself out of it, and you're gonna come up with like really good reasons, rational excuses. That's the stuff you need to watch out for, and just tell yourself, you know, as Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try. You're not going to try to do it. You're just going to do it. Even if you just write watermelon 1,700 times a day and you get the word count goal done, that's still better. What you don't want to do is fail, because even though there's no consequences, you're going to lose your confidence in writing if you tried, even if you half-assed tried or kind of wanted to do NaNoWriMo but then didn't do it because you gave up or you didn't have the confidence to do it, you're going to feel less sure about your ability to get shit done, to get things done, to finish books, and you don't want that to happen. So even if you do a shitty job and you write a shitty book, you still want to get the 50,000 words done. You don't want to talk yourself out of doing it. So some little things to do that. There's Brian Tracy's book, First Eat the Frog. Eat the Frog, I think it's called Eat the Frog. The idea is you take the one big thing that you would normally procrastinate about, the one thing you don't really want to do, that's the thing you need to do first. You need to put everything else off. You need to eat that thing first. I usually try to write before I do anything else. I don't let myself check my email or check Facebook or watch, you know, TV until I've done my word count. So sometimes that takes all day and I procrastinate and I'll take a walk or I'll read a book. I mean, there's certain things you can allow yourself to do, but the idea is don't let yourself do other things or be distracted until you've done the one big thing. Like I said earlier, with your to-do list, your only goal of the day should be to write your 1,700 words. You shouldn't have more than one thing on your to-do list, because then you can be like, well, I didn't get my goal, but I did these other things, and still feel good about yourself because you got something done, but it was the wrong thing. So be careful about substitution. The other thing that works pretty well, there's a book, Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. If you watch my other videos, I have reservations about that book for creative people, but it does do this really good thing where it externalizes your self-doubt into resistance, and it makes resistance into this demonic external figure, so you're not, you know, battling yourself. The interesting thing about the book is that if you just, you know, feel like giving up and you give up, you can also add self-doubt or blame or guilt, and those are all negative emotions. To avoid doing that, you could have this external devil who is tempting you away from finishing your goal, and that places the blame on somebody else. So then you can get angry and you can say, I'm gonna kick that guy's ass who's, you know, trying to stop me from finishing the personal goal I set for myself. So instead of, you know, feeling guilt or blame, you're feeling anger at this scapegoat, basically. That's an effective thing to do. So you might want to have something like that. You could even have like a voodoo doll or a punching bag or one of those little squeeze stress toys, something that you externalize as your demonic figure. And you can have, you know, the old angel devil on your shoulder. You could get real representations of that so that you can be punishing your devil whenever you feel demotivated. Maybe bringing little gifts to your muse. I wasn't going to talk about this in the video, but I do think it's a kind of cool and clever idea to bribe your muse. I don't necessarily believe in an external source of inspiration. I think those figures are both internal, but externalizing them is very powerful psychologically. So to believe in, you know, a muse who is responsible for bringing the inspiration, so then you can, rather than just feeling guilty like, oh, my muse isn't working today, I'm going to give up, you can do something. You can take action. This is why ritual magic works reasonably well. You can set up a ritual where, you know, in the morning you're going to bribe your muse with cookies or gifts or pretty things or whatever. I bought a really expensive, pretty Bluetooth keyboard, which is kind of ridiculous. It doesn't, it's functionally, it's no different from a $20 keyboard, and it was like $400. But the reason I think it's going to work is it makes me feel good about writing. It makes the writing process more enjoyable, and so I justify it as I'm buying expensive gifts for my muse because I believe in myself as a writer. I believe in writing as a career, and I'm going to put down money to buy expensive tools for my writing process because my writing is a business. I want to feel good about writing. I want to feel like a real writer. So that's how I justified this crazy price point for a really overpriced but very pretty Bluetooth keyboard. So that's not necessarily something you want to do, but I think thinking about externalizing your muse for inspiration and your kind of scapegoat for demotivation. I think if you externalize those and have a dialogue with those external forces, psychologically that can be very profound. So it's something you might want to think about. And just, even little things like, making sure your writing space is set up, making sure you have a motivational poster. I read something about, I forget what it was about, basically psychological hacks. And one of the cool things that they found was that, two of the really cool things that they found, one was just having a motivational poster on the wall actually made people more productive. So something simple like, you can do it, with a picture of somebody running, lame things like that can have a real effect on productivity. The other really interesting thing I found was they did a study where half of the group got real energy drinks, the other half of the group got energy drinks with like a 50% sticker on the drinks, and the ones who got the real one were more effective. They actually, there was a measurable increase in productivity, and there was a measurable decrease in productivity from the ones only because that 50% off sticker on their energy drinks. So they felt, even though it's non-rational, they felt that the decreased price point must have made those energy drinks less effective, which wasn't true, but psychologically it had an effect on their productivity, which I think is really interesting and important. So even, stupid little things like perhaps paying more for the expensive coffee rather than the cheap coffee, or something like that could have an effect. If you believe you're, drinking a magic bullet, this is kind of like the Harry Potter luck potion, I think it was, the lucky potion, where maybe there was nothing in the lucky potion except Harry Potter having the confidence and believing he was on the potion. And I think later on, there's a scene where, if you're a Harry Potter fan, Harry makes Ron believe Harry has given him the lucky potion, and Ron performs better at Quidditch just because he had the confidence. So those little things can do. There's a plane going on overhead, so I'm going to stop. I want to say one other thing. Elizabeth Gilbert, I mentioned Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art, but Elizabeth Gilbert also has a really good book called Big Magic, which I liked a lot. Elizabeth Gilbert also has a YouTube video, a TED Talk about how she externalizes her muse, which is kind of interesting to watch. And there's another TED Talk about basically the 5-minute rule. I don't remember exactly the speaker, but if you search for something like the 5-minute rule, I think she has a book and a TED Talk. But the idea behind it was, no, actually it's the 5-second rule. And the idea behind it is you can do anything in 5 seconds, because the significant part of doing anything is starting the thing. So if you sit down, if you get ready, you sit down, you open your document, you set your timer, like maybe prepare your tea, just make sure you're ready to sit down for your 20-minute sprint. The hard part is getting down and starting the thing. But that starting only takes 5 seconds. You can start anything in 5 seconds. So the idea for that rule is not to let yourself rationalize yourself out of the doing the thing. The hard part is just the starting. So if you study a little bit about the 5-second rule and learn enough about it to try it out, it works really well. And don't let yourself be like, well, should I do it now? Should I not do it now? Maybe I should wait till after I shower or eat. The 5-second rule, just do it. I also just remembered one other really awesome hack, which is kind of similar. You give yourself if-then situations. So you don't say, I'm going to write 2,000 words today or tomorrow. You say, I'm going to write 1,000 words after I shower. I'm going to write 1,000 words before I watch Netflix. You set up situations, scenarios where your productivity is linked to a normal daily task that you would do anyway, that you can't avoid. So after taking out after taking out the garbage, after doing the dishes, after taking the dog for a walk, something you're already going to do anyway, if you set that up at the beginning of the day, or like setting it up the night before and making a plan for the next day when you're going to do the words, then you're not, trying to fit in the sprints in your daily schedule. When you do the thing that you had planned out, you're not going to be able to tell yourself, well, I'm not really going to do this thing after I take out the garbage, because you've set yourself up to do the thing then. So if you do an if-then statement, I would do like 3 so that you can do 3 writing sprints a day. If you do 3 writing sprints a day of 20 minutes, you'll probably hit your 1,700 words a day pretty easily, and that's only an hour a day. That's very feasible, and you could do it all in one, or you could break it up into 3 sprints of 20 minutes. So rather than just setting a goal of 1,700 words a day, set a goal of 3 writing sprints of 20 minutes a day, and set a very clear intention of when you're going to do those. I'm going to do those before I go to school. I'm going to do those as soon as I get home from work. I'm going to do those on my lunch break. You can get stuff done in between. I have a friend who, she goes to work, she drives to work, I forget the word, commute. She commutes to work, so every day she gets a ton of words done on her commute. Maybe you take the bus or something. You could, if you have a little keyboard, you can get a lot of work done if you're just in the bus or a train. But you can also think about dictation. I'm not personally strong in dictation yet, but on your iPhone, if you have just a basic text app and the microphone button, the basic default iPhone or smartphone will do a pretty good job of dictation, and there are special apps that you can use. At this point, I probably wouldn't try to figure out or learn dictation because there is a learning curve. On the other hand, if you have 10 or 20 minutes to kill, try it out because it can be very effective to you. Just think about, okay, I'm going to do this scene. Try it out. Maybe, you do your 3 20-minute writing sprints a day, and you also try to do 10 minutes of dictation a day. Even if it's not very, even if the words you get down aren't really great, even if it's just a mind dump to talk about your characters or the scene before you go down to actually sit down and write the scene, that can be super effective. It might even be a process for you. Maybe you want to do 5 minutes of dictation and 20 minutes of a sprint. I think that can be really effective to get your mind in the right place before you actually do the writing. And it also can help you to train yourself to be more comfortable with dictation. Because if you do learn dictation, the friends I know who do crazy word sprints, 20,000 words a day or something, a lot of them are using dictations because we talk so much faster. So that is possible. Those are all confidence tips. I hope those really help. I'm going to pause it now and then move to 6. Okay, the last tip, this is number 6, and this is about health and energy. Basically your feelings, your energy, your emotional, psychological mood. And I'll mention something quickly that I forgot to say before under confidence and motivation, is that willpower is a drainable resource. There's a really good book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. I think this is where I got this fact or tidbit. But basically, you only have a certain amount of willpower a day, and you drain that resource when you do things like make decisions, and you decide, should I do this or should I do this? What should I eat for lunch? Where should I go, on my walk? Any kind of decision you have to make will drain your brain battery. So you want to, as much as possible, you want to get rid of all decisions before, because writing fiction or nonfiction, doing this kind of high-level creative work, it can be exhausting. And I've said, I checked myself recently because I say it's exhausting to do high-level creative work. It can also be very energizing and very enthusiating, which isn't a word, but it should be. It can fill you with energy if you do it the right way, although I don't believe there's a right way to do stuff. But I also, I think it's okay to understand and to know that it can be draining to do this kind of work. So you may need to sleep more. You may feel more exhausted than usual. You need to keep the confidence up high. It's going to be harder to keep your confidence up high because your willpower and your energy is going to be drained. So you want to try to keep that battery full by making as few decisions as possible, by making as few other difficult challenges as you can. Kind of like I said earlier, clear your plate. Plan out your day, pre-plan your schedule or your menu, know where you're going to go for lunch, little things like that. If you plan those out faster, it's going to save not only your time, but also your decision-making capabilities, because when you're actually writing, what happens always in NaNoWriMo is you're going to get to a point where you're stuck and you don't know what happens next. And you're going to have to figure that out, and you don't want to spend too much time debating about what happens next. And if you don't know what happens next, it can be very easy to give up or to say, to get stuck or to take a day off or just to give up completely because you get stuck, you feel like your story is not going anywhere, you feel like your chapter is bullshit or terrible, and this is always what happens. One thing you kind of have to do is just write through it or skip that scene and say, okay, this is obviously going to be cut later. I don't know what happens here. Maybe make little notes, but skip ahead to something else that you are excited about. Sometimes you can skip around rather than going in a linear fashion. If you can skip to the next big scene that you're excited about writing, that can be a big win. And then, go back and fill in those other scenes later. I would not necessarily want to do that because I want to make sure I have a structurally sound book when I finish. But definitely don't, waste a day because you don't know what happens. So you kind of do need to prepare for that because that's kind of going to happen. But don't get too stuck on that. Take an hour or two off, go for a walk. But I'm going to get back on point. So number 6 is really just about keeping your energy high. So sleeping more than you need to, taking naps during the day, going on walks, getting out in nature, drinking a lot of water, stretching or exercising, getting some sun. All of these things can have a big effect on productivity. You'll also probably notice that you'll cramp up, your back is going to hurt. Make sure that you have a right setup. If you're consistently, chronically uncomfortable or like in pain, then you probably have a poor setup. You want to make sure the monitor height is eye level. I think that's what people say. Or you want to make sure you have a really good mouse or keyboard setup and chair. Like little things like this can make a big difference. But also just that you're moving around and stretching after every writing sprint, before every writing sprint. Really psych yourself up a little bit. Do jumping jacks. Do a walk. Get in nature. Deep breathing exercises. You can look on YouTube and try some of those. All those little things, you want to make sure, like you might feel fine for the first couple days, but chances are towards the end of the month, you're going to be burnt out and frustrated, and you're going to be very demotivated. So that's when it's going to be easy to rationalize yourself out of finishing and being like, well, I got 36,000 words. That's really good for me. That's good enough. I'm happy with that. It's easy to make those kind of decisions later on in the month, and you really want to just power through. I've been guilty of that before, I think, in the past. And absolutely, logically, there's no benefit of, finishing 36,000 words of pretty good stuff versus finishing 50,000 words of crap that you force yourself to write. However, the advantage of finishing is the confidence, is the long-term confidence of knowing you can do it and figuring out your strengths and weaknesses and your process, figuring out what it takes for you to have a daily writing schedule so that you can consistently hit 50,000 words a month, and feeling that, doing that celebration, you did it. Even if it's an arbitrary goal that doesn't really matter, even if your 50,000 words aren't great and you're going to have to cut all of it anyway, you really want to get to that point of really high celebration where you can post on social media, I did it, I got 50,000 words, I'm a success. It's not even though it's arbitrary, even though it doesn't really mean anything, being successful at something that you tried to do, successfully completing a task that you set out to achieve, there's a lot of huge psychological benefits of doing something like that, which is really why people do NaNoWriMo. So normally before NaNoWriMo, I would tell you, you have to outline, you have to plan your book so that you can write a good book, and so that you don't, waste time figuring out what's going to happen, or, once you finish, you don't want to waste a year trying to revise it because you have a big mess. So I'm a strong believer in outlining. But also, especially if it's your first time, like I said earlier, definitely check out the plot dot or my other resources so that you have, the 8 big points. Because as long as you get those, you're going to have a pretty structurally sound novel. And then, once you have your first draft with your 50,000, you can figure out how those scenes fit together. And you'll have a much easier task of revising and editing into like a real publishable book. But I hope those 6 tips for NaNoWriMo prep help for NaNoWriMo or just for writing in general if you're trying to write faster or boost your productivity. These are good tips for any kind of creative work or task, so they really can be used no matter what you're trying to do. I definitely I don't use my time well. I have a lot of time now that I'm not using well. I would like to be better at being more productive on a consistent basis, especially for writing fiction. I think I wrote maybe 3 new novels this year, which on the one hand is pretty great. They're good, strong, long form novels. But I would like to be a full-time writer, which means writing, 6 books a year or 12 books a year. And I think that's possible for me because I know that I can write that much. I can write 3,000 words a day. I can write 90,000 words in a month. It takes me a couple weeks to revise. I make my own covers. It's possible for me to publish like 10 books a year, especially if that's the only thing I'm doing. I don't have a full-time job anymore. This is my vocation. It should be very possible for me to do it. At least that's the challenge that I'm setting up for myself. I failed this year. I wanted to do like 10 novels a year. I didn't do it. Hopefully next year will be better for me. I would like to finish some completed series, trilogies, 3 or 4 book series. I haven't done that yet. I only have 1 sequel out. So this fall I would like to write like 3 more sequels. Next year I'd like to finish some series and then start putting out quick, shorter form series, like 50K series, 7-book series, something like that. I'm excited about all those new projects I have, but I really need to focus on the production, the productivity, the daily writing habit, especially the daily writing habit, the monthly completed book goals. So those are the challenges that I'm working up towards. And I need to build the structure. A lot of things I talked about, the external accountability, the daily writing rituals, I haven't really built up for myself. And those are things that I know are really helpful and useful that I need to implement. So I hope this helps. If I didn't mention anything that works for you, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you do to help with your writing process. If I said anything that you liked or agreed with, let me know in the comments what you thought was your best tip. If this was useful, please share it. I'm going to put up a blog post on creativeindie.com where I write down this stuff, and I'll put the video there as well, and talk a little bit more about robots and automation and some of the other things I'm doing that I didn't talk about in this video. So thanks. Good luck with NaNoWriMo. Bye-bye.